You turn my mourning into dancing. You turn my mourning into dancing. You turn my mourning into dancing. 'Cause your love changes everything. Your love changes everything. Oh, there's something about your love. Something about your love changes everything in my body. Oh, something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. It changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. It changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. Changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. Changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. Changes everything. Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything. You turn my mourning into dancing. 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 Something about your love. Something about your love changes everything.
Good morning. Happy Fat Tuesday to everybody. As soon as I'm done today, I'm going to run up and get me some punchkis because that's what we do here in Michigan. It's just who we are. Yeah, my wife looks forward to this every single year. She was putting down her order before she went to bed last night. She wanted me to get up at 5 this morning and go and get them. And I talked her out of that, but then I set my alarm for 5 and it went off. She was, "What, are you crazy?" The donut shops will be a disaster. We go to DK. They make a pretty righteous punchki. They got the recipe down pretty good. We and then we go into a time of fasting and sacrifice. Some call it Lent. Some just do it. Who knows why? We are in Joshua 10, and we're going to do verses 6 through 11. Yesterday, if you were here, we talked about how the let me flip back just to make sure I don't have this wrong. Yesterday, we talked about the opposition forming against God's chosen leader against Joshua, and how we compared it to some of the stuff that Jesus had went through. Well, today in verses 6, it starts with the Amorites, and I thought that'd be a good place to start talking about. But before I do that, let's go through see who's here, because I get distracted by what's going on. Chuck B said, "Good morning, shalom, gentlemen." Ken Gooch says, "Good morning, fellow brothers in arms." Chris Connolly is here. Good morning, Chris. Bert Reggiani, as usual. And Zeke, good morning. And Lario, good morning. And that's what we have. According to this, I have 13 people online. So good morning, Connie. Good morning. Who else would be out there? That's okay. We love you. And that's the way it is. All right. So let's go. You ready? Let's go. The Amorites. Who are they? They were listed as descendants of Canaan. Canaan was the grandson of Noah. Somehow that branch of the family went offline. They just went off on their own and started doing their own thing. They were a tribal group from the hill country. They were one of many tribes of the Canaanite area. They're associated with idolatry, moral corruption. They even sacrificed their children. They represent a lot of the people of the promised land that were there and living, but they were doing these horrible practices, and God, for hundreds and hundreds of years, was telling them, stop. But some Amorite chiefs were friends with Abraham during this time, significant time before that, right? In Genesis 15, God told Abraham that the iniquity of the Amorites was not yet complete. They were there, but he wasn't happy with them. They were there, but he was losing his patience. That's who they were. And then that's where we pick up with today's verses. So let me pull those up. And the men of Gibeon sent to Joshua at the camp of Gilgal, saying, do not relax your hands from your servants. Come up to us quickly and save us and help us, for the king of the Amorites, who dwell in the hill country, are gathered against us. So Joshua went up from Gilgal, he and the people of war with him, all of the mighty men of valor. And the Lord said to Joshua, do not fear them, for I have given them into your hands. Not a man of them shall stand before you. So Joshua came upon them suddenly, having marched up all night from the Gilgal. And the Lord threw them into a panic before Israel, who struck them with a great blow at Gibeon and chased them by the way of the ascent of Beth Horon and struck them as far as Azekah. Oh my gosh, these words, these city names, in Makkedah. And they fled before Israel. While they were going down the ascent of Beth Horon, the Lord threw down large stones from heaven on them as far as Akazah, and they died. There were more who died because of the hailstones than the sons of Israel killed with a sword. It's short. There's a lot here, but it's short. I did some looking yesterday. Oh, let me pull this out of here now. I did some looking yesterday, and the Canaanites, they pleaded for help. Joshua honors their covenant. He marches all night with God's assurance of victory. The Lord threw them into a panic, and Israel's army chased them, right? That's basically the whole story. They chased through Beth Horon, it says, and then as far as these Azekah and Makkedah, or whatever however you say it. This is rough country, very hilly, very rough. According to what I could get from yesterday and looking, is about 20 miles from Gibeon to where they attacked. All right. And the march, and it was rough, really rough terrain, hilly. And then they chased them for another 20 plus miles. So you're talking about battles over 40 miles in duration. The stamina that it took, and then once the battle had started, hailstones started falling from God. They finished them off. And it always amazes me that more died from the hailstones than the sword. Joshua kept his promise. And the Lord did all the heavy lifting, right? I mean, that's the key to these words. I think the key to this whole set of scripture is that they moved obediently. They didn't go off on their own. God talked to them in obedience. They moved decisively, right? And they didn't delay. He didn't argue. He obeyed, right? So God represents. No, that doesn't represent. God responds, and I think that's these people in Gibeon who were sentenced to death, just like the Amorites, but through grace were allowed to live. Now he's responding to their cries for help. I think if there's anything we can learn today is that failure, Joshua's failures, they should never define us. I mean, they never define us to God. They might define us to the rest of the world, but to God, it doesn't define us. We look at in the scriptures, and we see David who failed, Peter who failed, Abraham failed, Jacob failed. There was a lot of failing, but the key to the thing is that God never turned his back on these people. He continued to use them to help others. I guess for me, the thing that we can take from this most of all is that God's love, while sometimes hard and and painful to accept, he still will love us through our flaws. He still will forgive us. The reason Jesus came is because he's willing to forgive us. He's willing to allow us to make mistakes and have flaws in our character. The Gibeonite army was rescued by Joshua. Kind of a far cry from what they were supposed to get. The Amorite army, I just wonder into myself if they would have chose Gibeonite's path, what would have happened. That's what I have for you this morning. I see Dave Donnelly showed up. Good morning, Dave. Pleasure to have you guys. You know that. Today's verses are Tom's out of town in Chicago, so it's called Without Supervision. But I'm being good, I think. Anyway, have a firm today, everybody, and may someone see Jesus in you today. Peace.